It started with Tony and I in her apartment sophomore year of college from 1 a.m. to 3 a.m., randomly messing around.
So we wrote it in spring, so spring break. Over spring break, it was Ezzy and I. We sat down at my apartment really late one night. It was 2 a.m., spring break of 2024.
I was very much in a psychedelic rock and festival era at the time. I mean, I always am, but was especially listening to a lot of Blasphemes at the time, and loved how they captured these repetitive instrumental parts that almost formed a symphonic trance moment. So I knew that I wanted to do something like that, especially when Tony initially started playing these heavier chords. It kind of came naturally to pair it with something like that.
My friend Rohais came and joined us. He's just this cool friend I had who also went to GT, and he played really good guitar because he had these really cool pedals, and we started playing around with a few stanzas I'd written in my notebook, and they were very gothic to begin with, and I had already kind of had after the Swan Drowned the name going, and he just sat down and wrote this really cool riff over this really low heavy bass line I had going. There were two songs that really inspired us. The first one was I Am Mothman by this Bice song that Bice had recently dropped that semester. They're an Atlanta-based noise rock experimental band. They're not together anymore, but at the time that's where the bass line was really derived. They had this cool chorus pedal effect over a slow chord progression going. It was very melancholy. And then Ezzy kind of got their guitar line down from the song called Mirage by Glass Beans, and Rohais really liked it, and we hopped on that. We experimented with a few time signatures, and then we ended up having the majority of what the song is now, and then later on Chris and Soph joined in and wrote their parts.
Okay, so after the Swan drums, I will say the drums that we recorded are very different from the ones that I played/play live. I think in the beginning, the way I played it live it was a very rock beat. It was a very ABCD rock beat, when the chorus comes, hit the crash as much as you can type of energy, and that's because that's really all I knew at the time. When I was first baby drummer in Father Figure, I really only knew the ABCD drum beats that I had in my one drum book, and so my one paradiddle pattern, and I'm okay, I can kind of make something shake off of this. But when we actually recorded, I ended up using more toms and trying to go more full kit, just because I felt that's what was missing from it. And even we had talked about it, Tony was really there was something that we need to do differently for the drums. So I workshopped it for a bit, that recording day, and yeah, that kind of Tommy, hella toms, lots of crash kind of vibe is what we ended up going for, and I really like it. I can't really play it live. I feel I was only able to play it that one time, but I love the way it came out, and yeah, I think I'll definitely practice it more so that I can play it live for people, because I really love it.
So like Tony mentioned, the song was already written when I joined the band, and I knew when I was writing my part, I loved Ezzy's guitar line a lot, and I didn't really want my part to overpower it. I wanted it to sit under it. And they had told me that their friend Rohais had kind of written a South Asian almost sounding, he was doing something kind of cool with his pedals, and it almost sounded like some kind of classical instrument. And so I wanted something a little bit softer, a little bit more mellow to kind of just sit underneath what Ezzy was doing. And I started out by just figuring out what notes sounded good by ear. And yeah, I just found like that 4th and 5th fret and was just kind of sitting there hammering on. And I didn't want to make it too complicated. So if you actually ever like look at what I'm playing, it almost looks like Just Like Heaven from The Cure, the lead line, which I didn't know that until afterwards, but it's like all on the same string mostly, and I'm just sort of, sliding up and down, dancing along with the song a bit. So it's kind of like what my riff sounded like. And when that, translated into the studio was that sonically I wanted the guitar part I was playing to sit underneath Ezzy and to not overpower it. You'll hear it if you're listening for it. It provides like ambiance, like a feeling to the song as opposed to an actual like riff that you would listen for. And if you've come to our shows, you'll notice that I was playing it differently every single time we would do it live. So I finally, when we got into the studio, sort of settled on what I was actually going to play.
Another source of inspo for this was the fact that the main guitar riff over the verses changes with the lyrics versus just with the timing of the song. So the line, "She always spoke kind of funny," hits, and the instrumental shifts with that. And I was listening to a lot of Phoebe Bridgers, as I always am, and had heard an episode of Song Exploder where she was breaking down Scott Street and was talking about how the instrumental, specifically the drums, changed when the lyrics were talking about the drums. And I love the idea of instrumental parts shifting at pivotal times in the lyrics, so I thought that was really cool on her end and production wise, and tried to take inspo from that as well. As far as the rest of the song, it's a very dynamic piece, and I knew the second Tony came up with that pre-chorus, the very like upbeat, fun part, I knew I wanted to like punch it with heavy power chords for the main chorus to then take us back and kind of drop us into the like, again, more psychedelic trance verses.
The spoken word was written exactly 1 year later because we recorded the album the spring break after. Like, everyone kind of decided in the band that it should be Bulgarian spoken word, given the themes in the song of like immigration and falling in love and kind of this perspective I had of my like parents' life and then also my life in the US. Even though I'm not an immigrant, I took a lot of like the symbolism and inspiration from their lives. And so I sat down in Riley, our producer's backyard, and I wrote a couple stanzas for the spoken word. The spoken word was heavily influenced, like thematically, by the relationship I was in at the time with someone we had just started off dating. But when I wrote after the Swan Drowned back in 2024 spring break, I was on the verge of like a mental breakdown, like a very, very heavy mental breakdown. And I was like desperately holding on mentally to like finish off the semester. I think I was having like a huge existential crisis with my education and my career, and I just gotten out of like a kind of really complicated breakup, and I was not feeling great, and I felt like it had a lot of the emotions derived. A lot of the lyrics were derived from feeling inadequate for my partner. The spoken word and the song have, like the lyrics of the actual song have very similar themes. They're not the same. I think the spoken word focuses a little bit more on the parallels between immigration and having to place your trust in things you can't control in order to have a good experience, and how love kind of parallels that, in that a lot is out of your control and you can have a bad experience due to things that, like, even though you tried your very best to make things work. And I thought that was a really cool parallel. The actual song itself has a lot of that symbolism. The theme still remains, but I think the song is more about like things not working out and like that purity that you have as someone very naive or really, really trying to make things work. You know, ultimately like that dying out in them or that being crushed, you know, the swan is drowning. And the whole song is about, you know, post the swan being drowned.
While recording, we decided to try and see if I could do some layers over Tony and create like a cool harmony or just a cool vocal layer to go underneath the pre-chorus and the chorus. And I basically just had the producer loop the same section over and over again while I tried different things. And you'll see in the clip, I really struggled to do my part with Tony in my ears. So for most of it, it was like all timing. I had to just be really on time with the drum track and do my best to stay within the correct vocal range, and it ended up working out really well, and it's honestly like one of my favorite parts of the song. And I think I just love the way that Tony and I's voices blend together, even on more than just After the Swan, which you will have to stick around and see for yourself.
Trying to find a different life, wasn't she good enough? Like dressed in white, trying to find a different light. I'm waiting, I'm waiting, I'm waiting, I'm waiting for the swan to drown, for the swan to drown, for the swan to drown, for the swan.
It's a really fun one to play live because it moves around a lot, and so surreal to have it out on streaming platforms now. For a long time at father figure shows, I'd always have friends come up to me and going, I love the Swan song, I love the Swan song. So it's a huge dream come true to have the first piece of music I've ever had out on streaming platforms be one with father figure and one that friends have requested. So After the Swan Drowned is now yours.